Hello everyone, very excited to be back with you for your lighting critiques. So I will be doing these probably Monday, Wednesday, Friday throughout the month of August. I won't always do videos, I'll sometimes do as written critiques, but for this first one I wanted to jump in with a quick video and give some feedback on what we got going on here. So I'll just go through them in the order in which I received them. So I'll start right here with this first one based on the Super Mario Brothers. So overall I think that you're making really good progress. You're doing a really nice job. You're matching some things really well. Like the black points in this image are really lifted. One thing about this reference that I always want to caveat when I'm looking at this stuff is just that this is a still from a film. It's motion blurred. It's a little bit softer than a clean images like this. But that being said, I do think that overall there's a little bit more diffusion that you can add to it. And again, this isn't necessarily in the lighting. This comes as like a post effect kind of deal. But just a little thought there. And so, I mean, it depends on where you are in the process. But like a basic way of doing this in Photoshop would be to make a copy. I'm just going to Control-C, Control-V this layer on top of it. So basically, I'm just copying the entirety of the image on top of itself. Then what I would do is I would just blur this using a Gaussian blur by like 8 pixels is totally fine. And then you can just add this back on top. We talk about this in other classes, but there's ways that you can either screen it or add it. They're slightly different in that the screen won't, like, do you see how when I add it, like it goes really, like the brights go really, really bright because you're just adding pixel values together. Screening it does the same thing, but it kind of caps out the brightest point. I actually think that you can go a little bit brighter. One of the things I was saying versus the original was that the brights could get pushed a little bit more. So I'll go ahead and add it, but just take this down so it's not quite, like nuclear kind of a thing. So we can go more up in like this region here. And then the one thing that you want to do when you're doing stuff like this is you can either delete it, erase it, or like I usually will just like make a little mask for this. And then in the mask, just go ahead and draw out some of the... Ooh, my Wacom is being funny. Let's see. Fix that later. I'll just use my mouse for this one. And then just like mask out some of these darker areas so it's not hitting everything quite uniformly. So it'd be like something more like that. So you can see how that little bit of influence goes in there. Ooh. Just try and keep it within that like main light ray there. There we go. All right, cool. But other than that, I really love the, obviously you're getting the glow effect to work. One of the things that's surprising to me about the glow effect is how much of the shadow that we're seeing in there, like how much we're shadow. Usually that gets softened a little bit, but that's totally fine. I mean, it's not like a big deal or anything. It was just something that I was noticing. And then but you did like a really good job of matching, the underlighting, the main shaping from the character, just kind of like the overall look of that, and I think that's really nice. Let's see. Some like little bits you can glean from stuff like getting some apparitions of like rainbow colors up in there, but I wouldn't worry too much about it. I think for you though, I think this is a really good first step, and I think you're ready to move on. I think you've got the key fundamentals of this. I usually don't like to have people hang too long on this first project. This is more about learning to like go from start to finish with the project, creating a render, getting it posted, receiving feedback, hitting notes, that kind of thing. Just like this is like the dry run, the walkthrough, to make sure that you got up to speed. So, and I think you've done a really good job of recognizing, thinking your eye is loose and ready to go on to the next project. So I'll encourage you to move on from here. So really nice job on this. All right, next up, we'll do this one next. This is a texturing and Lookdev project, and I think that, you talked about this being like a first step. And the one thing that I wanted to actually, let me fix my Wacom here real quick. Hold on. Okay, my Wacom is asking me to restart my computer, so I'm not going to do that. Okay, onward. So for this one, the biggest thing is, so at this point, two things. At this point, this feels like a color palette exploration, which is cool. But I think that the next step is like to really kind of mine in and get a little bit closer with some of the details of this. So each one of these segments, the skirt, the t-shirt, the scarf, the boots, the ears, the hair, it all like I'm seeing the way that these colors are playing out, but I want to know what those materials feel like. Like the the specularity on the fluffy ears and the roughness on the fluffy ears should feel very different than the plasticky boots versus the dress. So I think I think you've got it here, and I think the color palette you have is good. The only thing that I would push you on is the color of the scarf. I think that everything else has a certain kind of like saturation level that's a little bit higher, a little bit more pushed, where the scarf is more of a muted brown. And I'm not saying that everything has to be punchy, but like for this, it like that stands out as looking slightly different than the cohesive thing that you're kind of going for. So that'd be one. I'm trying to think. I would maybe consider pushing it into like a blue range, or maybe something cooler to match up with the skirt, because you kind of have like you have the yellows repeating, top with the ears, middle, and then with the boots. Maybe push it a little just more saturated red to match the hair. But I think that's the that would be the one area that I would adjust. And then from there, it's just a matter of getting in and adding some detail. Like you'll see the brown rim on the boots, like getting in the reference, getting that in there. Again, getting more specular detail, getting more bump. Bump will be the big one for the soft goods, like the fluffy ears. And then getting a better understanding of what material that skirt is made out of. So is it like soft and silky? Is it got more, both of those references you have seem to have more wrinkles in it. You can paint more wrinkles in the height map and do things like that. And then for the shirt, the t-shirt itself, I think you can get more detail in terms of like the seams, or like because if you look around the arms of any shirt, there's always stitching right before the base of it. So like trying to get some stitching in there, and then for the character herself. Oh, and then the other thing too with the ears look a little bit pure yellow versus the reference, which is a little more orange yellow. I mean, I don't know how much you want to match that, but just to keep that in mind. Also, the pinks of the inside, you could probably punch up the saturation on those as well. They feel a little toned down. In terms of the character herself, a couple things you want to be aware of. Always paint the back of the mouth a little bit of a lifted color. Do you see how like the inside of her mouth is like a super jet black color compared to the character on the screen left-hand side, when it's like a kind of a warmer red, like it's dark, but it's like a warmer red color. You never want that super jet black mouth. Her teeth look a little bit dark as well. They should match her eye color, the eye white color. And those should be the brightest things on characters for the most part, the eye whites and the teeth, unless there's some like villainous character or something. And then the eyes, I think you can push the values of each of those. They all look a little low contrast right now, so push the whites a little brighter, push the eye color a little more saturated, and then push the dark pupil a little bit darker too. And then as you're building out the character too, the face, the face will need more variation in terms of like, slightly rosier cheeks. The lips will be a slightly different color than the rest of her face. You can see from the reference character, and just adding some more nuance. If you add any freckles, blemishes, sun damage or anything like that, you can throw that in there too. So again, I think it's a good base. I think you're building off of a good start. It's just a matter of getting some more nuanced detail into each element to really make it feel like the specific type of material that it is. So, and then for the lighting question, it's much more about, I usually, and I know you said don't worry about answering it, but I'll do it anyway. I usually make sure that for lighting setup, it's all about the lights being white, like making sure that there's zero color in any of them, because you don't want that to interfere with anything. You also want to ensure that, like, I usually go with a value depending on what lights I have in there. I want the value of the lights usually to add up to 1, so it's usually like a 70% key light, maybe a 20% skylight of the value, and then 10% of like maybe a fill or a kick or something. But basically I want to set like a base value of it, and then but all of that is secondary to the biggest thing, which is it just all needs to work harmoniously. Like you don't want to you don't want the value of the scarf to be a lot darker than the shirt or the skirt or anything, because then all you'll end up having to do is forever you'll have to tweak it in post or create separate light linking just for that element. So that's the big thing on that. So that's all I gotta say there. All right, fantasy tree. Okay, yeah, I agree with Mason that this one's looking really well. The only thing that I would do, because I think that you've got, you talked about having some really nice, vignetting in terms of both color and value, which is great. But the only thing, there's two things. One, the little dots that are floating around, I would almost make a few less of them, because I feel like I'm less certain if these are orbs in the space or if these are a lens artifact, like a flare or a spot on the lens or something. Just because I'm having a little bit of difficulty placing them in space. So things like, let me get a brighter color so you can actually see it. So one of the things, like if I'm looking back here, and I'll actually turn up my flow to 100%. There we go. So one of the things like back here is that like I'm not seeing them influence the water as much. Like I'm just not seeing their reflection in the water. So that would help tie them in if they were together. But at the same time, if I look over here, I see like little pockets of their influence on the tree stump. And so I would say either. Also, there's just like a lot of them, and I think that I would tone them down a little bit, because it's really it's covering up some of the really beautiful stuff that you've done overall. Now, the other thing that I would consider doing is that there's a couple parts here where you're. I think that adding a little bit of darkness would actually help. Like there's some areas up here in the leaves where it's starting to reveal the fact that, like, especially right in here. Oops, my mouse is a little bit janky here. Here we go. One of the things that's really telling about it is that it's like if it starts to kind of just flatten the shape of the leaves out up there, so it doesn't quite look as it kind of breaks the illusion a little bit. And again, like you've got so much good stuff going on around the tree and the door and all of those elements that I would really hate to kind of like, I really just kind of want to focus everyone in there. So what I would do is I just made a copy of this layer. I'm going to go ahead and, I'll just for purposes here, I would just darken this down. Actually, let me do this without my little circle on there. There we go. And I would darken this down, and just with the idea of using this darkness level to help create a little bit more mystery in it. And I'm just going to go ahead and desaturate that a little bit. And then my wake again isn't working at the moment, so I'll fix that for next time. So I'm just doing this with the mouse, and then you can keep the center of this. That might actually be a little bit too much. Like keep the center of it really bright, and then let me just make a duplicate layer here, just so I can do something here real quick. And then I would combine these two. Just merge these layers, and again, this is all just for visualization purposes. And then I would take another layer on top of it. Although it looks like, you have some good diffusion going on in there. But I would just do something like this to really kind of focus it in. This might be a little bit strong. Maybe take it back just a little bit. But you can see that by darkening some of the areas in the surroundings, you're kind of creating, again, even more focus, but also masking out and kind of hiding some of the areas that may start to break the illusion again, like it's not full geo on these leaves, they're just flat planes. So that's pretty much it. But like I said, I agree with Mason. You've got a really beautiful image here. I really love everything that's kind of going on in here. And yeah, like you really kind of feel the majesty of this whole thing, which is really nice. Oh, something else to consider is adding some like caustic reflections from the water back up here. Like I always think that those are nice, and they kind of, like really tie the water surface in. Again, there's not a super amount of bright light in the scene that would drive that, but just getting a little bit of those like wavy refraction things up on this underside thing will really I don't know, give it a try and see if you like it. I think that those are always really fun. So, all right, that's it for today, everyone. I hope you found this beneficial. And if you have any questions, let me know, and I will see you all back again on Wednesday.